Hello, my name is Song Song. I'm happy to be here today and very excited to be in San Diego. Let's go Padres.
Welcome to Marty Time TV. I am Marty Caswell. That's my guy, Darren Smith. We are brought to you by the all-new Hamul Casino Resort, the Players Place. That was a Sungwoon song from a while ago. I have a short open just because we have so much to get to and so little time. But Darren, we have a little bit of Padres news. Heading into spring training, we have maybe some resolution when it comes to the lawsuit. And my first thought was, does this mean now that a sale can move quicker? How are you today?
I'm good, Marty. How are you doing? That was quite the open, by the way. I wasn't sure what exactly we were getting into there or how you found that, but yes. You never cease to surprise us with your extensive archive of video clips of Padres people doing all sorts of things. So kudos to you. Yes, you should sell this as like a holiday gift set somewhere down the road.
I will one day. It'll be just different greetings. I'm kind of all over the place right now. You know, I know the Padres made some news on the field with Miguel Andujar, but I just think that right now, going into spring training, the biggest buzz going in, it's not going to be AJ Prella's contract. I know we spent so much time talking about it, but actually now that I think about it, it makes a lot more sense that nothing is done. Because if we, and I'm going to get your opinion on this right now, if we think a deal is close or it's maybe a few months away, you can wait to find out the future of the president of baseball operations and your GM.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that brings things into a little bit more focus. I'm sure we'll just go over some of these names and probably take the same approach that a lot of other people have, which is simply just to Google these people and sort of regurgitate whatever it is that you find out there while you're doing these web searches. But, I thought the first clue, Marty, that things were moving a little bit quicker than I would have initially thought was when the announcement came that the Padres plans to build on the parking lot, that they were moving on from that. And it sort of suggested, now listen, I have like zero experience about being an urban planner. Fortune 500 commentary is not exactly what I'm known for. So take everything that I'm about to say with a pinch of salt. But when I saw that the Padres had moved on, I sort of said, okay, so this thing was in litigation and the Padres are moving on from the park at the park. It sort of suggests that they are not going to make this part of the sale, like that you have to enter into ownership of the San Diego Padres. And there's also this lawsuit going on with this piece of property that once upon a time was going to be developed by that guy, Peter Seidler, and others into some innovation hub or some sort of commercial real estate or residential real estate, I forget. So when you saw that was about a month ago, and it probably was not so much on the radar of people who are just paying attention to the sports and wondering what's happening with the roster. You said that's a clue that things might be moving a little quickly here, just to move on from that. So you're not coming into ownership and a lawsuit, right, simultaneously. The second thing now is the Seidler settlement. And, there's still a couple details there that I guess need to be ironed out. Again, I will add to the list of things that I'm not qualified to talk about, estate law and estate planning. But, these are clues now that, and based on some of the rumors that I'm sure you've heard, I've heard, others have reported on, that actual potential buyers are touring Petco Park. It seems like things are moving much quicker than I would have thought when the announcement was made a couple of months ago that the Seidler family was going to pursue a potential sale. I think the term potential now feels like certain, if not imminent, sale of the Padres.
Now that we know that certain people are touring Petco Park, they are in talks. Darren, I'm going to go ahead and those images I showed, let's see, Joe Lacob, Jose Feliciano, and help me with the last name because I'm going to butcher it.
Friedkin.
Yes. Of these candidates, like just based on what we think we know about them, what we've read about them, whether in Sportico or Forbes magazines or digging behind the scene, who right now would be the best owner for Padres fans going forward? And by the way, I do want to remind people that wealth does not automatically mean that you're going to be a great owner. Owning another franchise in a different sport doesn't mean you're going to be a great baseball owner. And one guy I will point to as an example is Stan Kroenke, right? Great Rams owner. His teams win. He invests. He gave back. He builds. But I know that he's not very popular with with soccer fans. So just based on what we know about these people, Darren, give me your scouting report. Let's start with Jose Feliciano.
Yeah, although today actually Stan Kroenke is a bit popular. Arsenal top of the table in the Premier League. Yeah, I mean he's got a lot of things working for him, the Stan Kroenke. I would rank these three.
Okay.
Just in terms of, again, this news just breaking. You and I kind of jumping in here on the fly to talk about it. I would just rank these three and not in indelible ink, just based on again, and I could explain this. I would say Dan Friedkin would be 1 for me. I would say that Joe Lacob would be 2 for me, and I would say that Jose Feliciano Jr. would be 3. Now, again, this is based on some stuff which is surface level. The difference between Friedkin and Feliciano, I could explain the difference between Everton and Chelsea, which might mean something to some people watching, or it might completely go over people's heads. Hi.
Just move just to the right or your left.
Yeah. By the way, he was born in San Diego. I'm sure everybody has found that out on his Wikipedia
page. Connecting those dots, right?
Yeah. And family comes from money, has an insane amount of personal wealth. But the situation that he inherited at Everton Football Club, Marty, is one that that team was in complete turmoil. There are terms that you heard about Everton. Which is a English Premier League club that Landon Donovan played for. I mean, and a million other people, but that was in financial disrepair. Which had been in relegation battles for like 3-4 consecutive years. Was a disaster. And this is somebody who came in. There was all sorts of issues with debt. And the Friedkin group went in there and took care of that. Like they figured out a way to convert debt into equity, so there's a lot of things there. You kind of go, oh, okay, that's interesting. And the amount of wealth I think is significant. It's more significant than either Feliciano or Lacob. Again, now, we can also talk about some of the other things, like you said. I mean, just because he owns a couple of different soccer clubs doesn't mean he's going to be a good baseball owner. Right. But again, we're just sort of operating on a surface level. The thing about Lacob is, Lacob has been interested in buying baseball teams for a while, whether it was the Angels, the A's.
He wanted the A's before John Fisher. You just gutted them and moved them.
Southern California roots guy. I also would remind everybody that Joe Lacob was like booed off the court at Oracle Arena not that long ago. I can remember having Tim Kawakami on the radio show and we were talking about that. He was not popular until Steph Curry became, one of the greatest 3-point shooters in the history of the NBA. And they went on to win 4 titles and 6 NBA finals. So, there was a time where Joe Lacob was literally booed off the court at Oracle. Feliciano is part of a group that owns Chelsea. And, Chelsea fans are kind of,
go ahead.
Born to be unhappy. But
so they're like Austin fans.
Yeah, but, in their defense, they had an owner who was a Russian oligarch who just spent money hand over fist and just bought them whatever and didn't care about profitability, only cared about winning, right? Sounds like somebody and current climate at Chelsea is not one of positivity. Their fans recently, there was a Chelsea fan survey. And again, I don't know who responds to this stuff, but 55-60% of the Chelsea fans that they were dissatisfied, that they were not confident in the direction, because it's treated like a hedge fund. It's not treated like a football club. But it's not treated the way that this Russian oligarch, with direct ties to Vladimir Putin, whatever. It's not treated that way. It's treated like a hedge fund, and it's about profitability. It's not about winning. These are businesses, so again, that can sound a little bit naive. So, of those three, that would be the way I would rank it. Just again, my initial reaction to it all. And I say huge asterisk, subject to change, like in an hour.
Right. And there's going to be more names. I mean, these are the names that we know of right now, but I'm sure there are other bidders. I'm just wondering how close it is, because I'm sure that you and I are both talking to a bunch of different people, maybe some of the same people. And there seems to be an indication this might be closer than we even thought. And again, the fact that we have resolution with Shield, because Major League Baseball is not letting a sale happen until all those things have been satisfied and the lawsuit has been settled. I think it's I think in about a week from today, Rob Manfred's going to hold his annual spring training press conference in the Cactus League, and hopefully I will be there. And I'm sure we will pepper him on questions. The most important thing I'm going to ask is, are we going to go ahead and guarantee that whoever buys the Padres is not going to do it on an installment plan? Because you guys screwed it up years ago when you would let Jeff Morad do that. So the big thing is wealth and investment, and how baseball is going to go ahead and monitor that.
And I think that is again, for me, just the thing that stands out about the situation with Dan Friedkin and the Friedkin group and Everton is that they did buy a bunch of debt. That thing was not going good at all. They had been punished by the Premier League. They had been docked points. They were almost in they were in relegation. And he was personally, he had he's a substantial person. You know what I mean? Like, he's got this amount of wealth that, he went in there and didn't rely. I mean, listen, I don't know this, it wasn't relying on private equity. It was like, I have this, I'm a significant, business entrepreneur, philanthropist. And like, I know how to convert this sort of stuff. And he really helped take a lot of pressure off the club to the point now where, he went out, he got a new manager, which was their old manager. And they've stabilized things there. And when you hear a lot about debt, you're like, oh, well, what about the debt and the loans and all that sort of stuff? Somebody with like substantial income, and these guys are all like rich beyond comprehension, right? But one is, got a little bit more experience, and he's a sports person, right? Like, I think that matters too. You come from a world where you own a couple different soccer clubs, and that's what you do. I think, Lake Up is obviously involved in sports, and Feliciano is, but that's a more recent thing. There's not like a longer history of that to my knowledge. So I do agree with your point. I do think, initially when the announcement came that they were going to be pursuing some sort of sale, I think my initial reaction was like, well, this isn't going to happen till after the season, till after the CBA is negotiated. This might drag out over a couple of years, right? And it still might. There's media rights deals, but it sounds like there is an urgency to, let's move this quickly. Let's see where we are in terms of how much we can get for the Padres. $2+ billion seems to be the agreed upon amount. And let's move forward here. And if it's a reasonable deal that MLB owners will accept it, I kind of got my mind wrapped up into thinking, well, what about CBA negotiations? And, this team was bought for $800 million back in 2012. And if you sell it for $2+ billion, is the Players Association going to be like, hey, look at that, these guys are making money hand over fist, this is amazing, what are they whining about? But it seems like that's just a bunch of things that nobody really cares about except for me. So, I agree. Like, I think it feels like this thing is moving. All I have heard from somebody who's in the space, the interest is real. Like, the interest is very, very real. And, I think that you're right. And I think most people now understand that this is something that seems to be moving quicker than at least I would have initially thought when we first heard the announcement.
Completely agree. And I know there's been like a lot of conversation about John Seidler, why is he doing this? Why has it been so slow? Why doesn't he talk to anybody? But my understanding from anyone who's around it is he doesn't have an appetite for this role. This is not what he wanted to do, right? His dream was never to be an owner. He doesn't want to be a front facing person. So I just get the sense that this is resolution, move on, move forward. And hopefully we media, fans have an answer sooner rather than later this season before the lockout. I'm with you. I thought it was going to drag out for years, but everything that I'm hearing, the way this is moving, the comments by Rob Manfred make me think this is going to happen much sooner than we think. So
I think that's a good thing, right? Because, then on the other side of whatever the CBA is going to look like, you would think, at least in theory, again, my background not being in economics, that, there's going to be a little bit of stability, whatever it looks like following. And, that you would stand to see the valuation of the franchise increase, which is something I'm sure everybody really cares about, franchise valuations.
We care if they spend it on the payroll. I think people should only care about that if they invest that right back into their team.
Yeah. And, and there is some history. Again, the situation's a little bit different at Everton, where they had to rescue this team. They had to pull this team out of the fire. Where, at Chelsea, it's like, I don't know, like we're supposed to be a big club here. And now it seems like we're focused more on, just being able to, move players around and sell players, it seems like that's their business model. The Warriors' history and the willingness to pay the tax, that the Warriors have. But, again, the Warriors were also valued as one of the most if not the most valuable franchise in the NBA. It was either them or the Knicks. So, it's always 1-2 now from where the Warriors were. It's a great success story. There are still people, I suppose it's fair to bring it up, that, hold it against Joe Lacob that they moved the Warriors from Oakland into San Francisco, right? Like the soul of the Warriors from longtime Warriors fans was rooted in Oakland and East Bay. Did that turn some people off? I suppose. But, I think for the most part, people say, hey, listen, it's not that far. It's like moving the team from, one part of the county to the other. But, some people did not love that. Some people did not love that. But, I think overall, Joe Lacob is, probably somebody, unless you're going to go back to the Barry Bloom story, and there's some reason to think that, he's the person who might
relocate the team.
Relocate, I mean, still a weird thing to write, but
relocate the team to where exactly? Back to Oakland?
I think that was the conclusion, wasn't it, in that Forbes story from Boomski? I think that was the conclusion.
I still haven't called back. I know that's your next question. I have not called him back yet. Maybe I will. Maybe I'll see him. I'm sure I'll see him at Rob Manfred's press conference, and we can hash it out then.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I mean, it's I think some of it is exciting. Not having these seat fillers like Eric Katsenda and John Seidler, right? And sorry if that sounds a bit harsh for either one of them. They didn't ask for this per se, but I know that Eric Katsenda didn't love his time sitting in that chair, and was like, hey, I'm trying to do a favor for a lifelong friend here. I get dragged on Twitter every day, and sign up for this shit. And the same sort of thing is like John Seidler. We didn't sign up for this.
He looks so uncomfortable every time I see him. He's like, he wants no part of this.
It sounds like the people that are closer to it are like, yeah, he's just like, get me out of here,
right.
And if a good deal is there, and it sounds like a good deal is willing and waiting. Now again, it's an interesting point. Have any of these prospective buyers had a look at the financials? There's been no reporting on that. Lots of people would be interested in buying the Padres, and there's a reason why you would toss names out there. You would definitely chum the water, and I do believe that interest is real. Lacob reportedly has been in San Diego. The way Friedkin operated with Everton, he's a very behind the scenes guy. He's not somebody that really wants to, he's not somebody who's, going to be very like, hey, look at me. I'm going to be, doesn't choose to operate that way. I don't know enough about, what's going on over there at Chelsea other than the dissatisfaction and the Feliciano group, the Clear Lake group. But have they had a look and do they know what they're getting into here? Have they really? Because remember the interesting line, that was interesting from that Forbes article was about the debt, which is why the Seidler family was getting out of this. Again, which is why I think, thinking about the Everton situation and Friedman is, maybe there's some more, connective tissue to that situation here, but maybe they look at the books and they go, hey, wait a second, what's going on around here? What are we paying for? I don't, what's this all about? So it's anybody's guess, Marty, whether they've actually had a chance to look at that stuff or not. And do they like what they see? Are they willing to say, hey, listen, we can make this work? I don't know.
Of what about these three candidates in particular, do you expect them to be like hands-off owners? And what I mean, like you want to be Jerry Jones and holding a press conference and having says over the roster and speaking about the baseball side, or do you expect them to be more like, what, I'm going to hire my guy, have the right people in place, and let them do the thing. I'll just send me the bills.
I think, I think Lacob is clearly a front and center kind of person. He is available. He goes on Tim Kawakami's podcast all the time up in the Bay Area. He is somebody who there is lots of access to if that is something that people care about. I have heard the opposite of Dan Friedkin. Now, maybe things would be different because this is his hometown. He's from San Diego. Father started a very successful business here, right? Like family has business all over the world. But he, as I understand it, is somebody who chooses not to be out there and forward facing. And I don't know enough about Feliciano. I've only read a couple of stories where he's quoted, but other than that, I have no idea, if he's going to appear anytime soon on Marty Time television.
Well, yes. Count on that. When I go to spring training, when I go to Peoria, I'm gonna keep on my phone constant images of all three. I will have my eyes just scouring around. Perhaps I'll be touring the Peoria Sports Complex. You don't want to just go to see Petco Park. You want to see all the properties that you're going to be inheriting, right? And kind of get a sense of the vibe around the team. That's where you want to go. I mean, you have to do your due diligence. So
yeah, man, you got to go see all those chain restaurants out there in Peoria.
Yes.
You got to figure out, like, am I going to be going to Chili's tonight? Is it going to be Applebee's? Is it going to be Olive Garden? Where am I going to be dining when I go out and catch the Padres in spring training? Because I'll see you in Peoria.
Yes, and Red Lobster. And by the way, they were all on one block. It's just remarkable that all the chains.
Who can say no to this?
on one block.
Although the Padres don't own the Peoria Sports Complex, just like they really don't own Petco Park, but for 30% of it. But
yeah,
you know,
I know.
So it's an interesting, it's an interesting dynamic. Again, like it's. There's a lot. Like I said, I'd be curious to know what these successful people think of the way the business has been run, and if they look at any potential speed bumps here, like, because the Padres were not run like a business. The Padres were run like an enterprise that was trying to win things,
like a passion.
That's the thing that we really all loved about Peter. Now, like, he left behind and a situation which if you're just thinking about the bottom line business of baseball, you might be going, well, that's kind of curious, isn't it? Like, well, why did we sign this guy? But, that's part of the deal. So, you have to understand the way the previous guy was wired. And, you have to understand also why it made him so popular in this market. But, if you go back to doing business the way, like the Brewers do it, you're just like, well, listen, we got to trade this guy away.
Yeah.
Or the Tigers, where they're getting rid of a 2-time Cy Young Award winner, then it's like, okay. Some people would advocate for that, Marty. Who knows?
I know I'm getting ahead of it right now, and we'll have time for this discussion later on. But how do you think the Peter Seidler era will be remembered?
Well, I'm going to remember it as a positive one. I mean, I feel like some have started turning a little bit on this. The man died. And that's now it's like, well, how did we end up with this contract, and how did we end up in this situation? This man passed away. And, he passed away doing everything he could to try to bring a championship to San Diego. And I appreciate that was his priority. He knew that the franchise was increasing in value every minute of every day. He was part of a group in 2012, right, that bought it for $800 million. It's going to sell for over $2 billion. And people still, to go out of their way to whine about the finances around here.
Right.
Sorry. Like he ran it in a way where we were very, very clear what the priorities were. Did they make some mistakes? Yeah, they did. Did they spend too much money on certain people? Yeah. Probably. Does that look unappealing now, especially for somebody who's coming in who might have a different worldview of how things should be run? Sure. But, like I will always choose to believe that Peter was figuring out, like, I'll figure out a way to pay these bills. I'll figure out a way to make sure that we're moving in the right direction. I think any of the people that work with Peter Seidler and building something that was truly like exciting, even if it came up short of the ultimate goal, I think that the people who worked there are like, we knew what this guy was all about. This guy was about winning. This guy really, really wanted to deliver a championship to San Diego. Lots of people say that, and one person was willing to put his money where his mouth was in ways that nobody else has, and probably nobody else will. And, again, I hate that the legacy is, you hear these whispers about, well, now we're stuck with Xander Bogaerts. And I'm like, yeah, it was a bad deal that most people would say was pinned on Peter. It's not Xander's fault. Somebody gave him that kind of money when nobody else was, but, in a moment, like, he thought that this was a chance, this was like a chance that they had to really go for something and do something that they, could never do with where Peter was in his life. And I think he should forever be celebrated for that desire, especially when you got a lot of these other dickhead owners out there in the sport who don't do anything to help their team win. They don't do anything. Like like the owners that you hear about who don't even want a salary floor because it's going to impact their profitability. Like, I mean, I'll take this over that any day of the week.
I'd agree. The idea of hope, Hope and
Yep.
changed the culture. Forever changed and created a culture that did not exist when it came to this Padres franchise. He just did. Darren, before we wrap things up, anything you want to go ahead and take away from the CONCACAF Champions League?
Oh, what a night. I mean, what a turnaround that was. That was like the greatest 18 minutes in recent memory, Marty.
Greatest 18 minutes. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean the 18 minutes. They were statistically running Pumas off the field everywhere but the scoreboard, and it just is like, oh God, are you gonna lose a game where you give up one shot on target? Amazing goal from Pumas, by the way. And then the floodgates just opened up, and one became two, and then the roof completely caved in on Pumas. So taking a 4-1 lead to Mexico City on Tuesday is that is more than thank you, by the way, for letting Eric Gomez and I talk a little bit about that earlier this week on Tuesday. But, we both thought SDFC would be in a pretty good situation. Like, I think we agreed 2-1, then 4-1 was amazing. So, it was exciting. The younger players, the youth continues to be served in San Diego with SDFC. The goal scorers were 23, 20, 19 and 19. Think about that. It's just incredible. These guys are out there against one of the biggest clubs in North America, and they're having that kind of success. And, the image at the end of that game of Keylor Navas, who's the goalkeeper for Pumas, who's a legend, who's like 3-time Champions League winner with Real Madrid, like face down in the dirt at Snapdragon Stadium while 19-year-old Luca Bambino is scoring over him. It's just like, it's a surreal moment, to think like this Luca Bambino, who a year ago was with like MLS Next Pro and LAFC, is now, hovering over this legend in Keylor Navas with his face down in the dirt. Like, it just, I don't know. It's just a great night. And, they had a great plan. I won't bore you with all the statistics, but, in terms of possession, the amount of passing, like they just, and then it just opened up, and God, it was so fun and it was so exciting. And like, if there were 10 more minutes of that game, they might've scored 4 more goals. It just was, Pumas could do nothing to stop it, and a huge advantage. Totally different experience. You're going to elevation, Marty, as you know, you've been to Mexico City. I mean, it's like 11,000 feet up there. So
when you leave
Tuesday morning. So, it's different, and, that crowd will be worked up into a frenzy for sure. But, they also now have to open up, and they have to go for it, which is good news for SDFC, because, I cannot imagine that SDFC is going to be kept off the scoreboard in this one. So, massive moment for SDFC to take on potentially, Marty, if they advance the 2-time reigning Liga MX champs in Toluca. So an incredible night,
awesome.
That felt like for 70 minutes, like, I don't know where this is going to end up. They're doing a lot of things well, except for the one thing that matters most in the sport, which is scoring. And then they totally just open up a can, and man, it was fun. It was a lot of fun. And take about of those guys, 3 weeks of preseason, Marty. They've had 3 weeks. Pumas has been playing for a month. And, they'd been pretty stingy in allowing goals. They had only allowed 3, I think, in 4 games. And then, here comes SDFC, 4 goals from the kids in 18 minutes of action in the second half. So it was a very, very rewarding night, and a credit, to the players and to the staff and to the coaches as well. So a lot of fun. Looking forward to Tuesday. Should be a blast. Good.
We'll have a lot of fun. Eat a lot of great Mexican food. Are you staying with Eric Gomez? What's your plan when you get there?
Yeah.
Nice.
I'm not gonna bother him and stay at his house, but I'll find a place close by. And
wait, you haven't booked a place yet?
Airbnbs are very easy to come by.
Actually, I haven't booked a place for Peoria. So who am I to talk? I am that last minute person.
Gee, Marty, are you going to stay at the Comfort Inn, or are you going to stay at which 5-star resort are you going to?
The Red Roof Inn. No, those rates are like Super Bowl-esque for spring training. Plus, it's like a holiday weekend. It's like, oh,
joke.
It's through the roof. But no,
no time for Miguel Andujar, huh?
That's on the ticker. No time for Miguel Andujar. That's your big splash signing, guys. Enjoy it. 1 year, $4 million. There's your DH. I know Craig Stammen said they don't have a DH. You're gonna figure it out. There's your DH. Throw Manny in there. Him, Bogarts, a couple days off, and
you don't think that's a platoon situation for him and Sheets at first?
And Sheets at first base? No, I think it is. I do. Yeah.
I mean, Sheets is like 4 home runs from the left side in his career out of 65. Like, That's a platoon situation, I would think. And, when 4 out of 65 come against left-handed pitching, I should say, I think
what's the math on that?
maybe that's cause for some platoon concern. Just a thought. I don't know.
Maybe. Hey, before we wrap things up, I do want to mention on my last episode on Friar Territory, part of the Foul Territory TV network, I did speak with Keith Law, who's always been a favorite of ours, Darren, talking Padres. He had a big write-up on the Padres top 20 prospects, and it pretty much started with him saying, listen, if you read his piece, I knew the Padres system was barren because of all the trades they've made, but holy smokes, I didn't realize how barren. He thinks it's a huge one for Ethan Salas. They got to figure out who this guy is right now, man, before he turns. Yeah. You don't want that B word. He's still a teenager. He's still so young, but that back injury, a stress fracture for a catcher, is worrisome. So find that episode on Fire Territory. I have more coming. Darren, you're the best. Let's do this again next week. Maybe we'll have time before you go to Mexico City. We'll see what happens. Maybe we'll see. Let's put it out there, guys. If anybody out there sees, whoops, sorry, my screen's all changing. Any of the prospective owners out there, take a picture. Better yet, a video. Send it to us so we can use it on next week's show. Yes,
I like that.
We're officially a bounty. We have a bounty on prospective Padres owners. Let's go.
Good idea. I'm going to go light this wonderful fireplace in the background, Marty. Can you see it there? Yeah.
What a beautiful home, Darren. You and Leo, but great job in remodeling. Yeah.
Yeah. Doing a little travel, Marty. So I had the access here to go light this fireplace up and roast my cold tootsies.
Wow. Okay. Get to it. That's Darren Smith. I'm Marty Caswell. Thank you so much for watching Marty Time TV. We are brought to you by the all-new Hamul Casino Resort, the Players Place. I have a new logo coming next week. Thanks, guys. Have a great weekend. Talk to you soon. Bad Bunny halftime show. Yeah. Goodbye.
Yeah, talks continue. Nothing new. Same comment that has been made multiple times before. Yeah. Thanks.
Expect to have any news soon on AJ Proller's status going forward?
Yeah, as I said recently, that's a conversation that's happening between John and AJ this offseason, and I think we continue to remain confident that AJ is going to be our president of baseball operations past 2026, and excited to continue to build on the success that we've had here together.